Thank you. All right. Well, thank you. It's good to be here. I don't have anything interesting to say, but it's been fun, and I see some people I haven't seen in a long time, especially Larry Boyd back there, and Dave. Anyhow, I'm Roger Blevins. I was born in Nixa, Missouri, and still live there. When I was a kid, we moved to Highlandville, and my mom had an old acoustic guitar, and I'd heard a steel guitar on the radio, and I thought, boy, I like the sound of that. And I was just a kid, and so I said, I wonder if I could play that guitar. She said, well, it's not fixed like a steel. So anyhow, I had a guy to tune it for me, and I had a pocket knife, and that was my bar, so I just started after it, and finally stayed with it. It's been a good career for me, but anyhow, we moved back to Nixa, and I grew up with all the May boys that started the Baldknobbers show in Branson, and we lived on a farm next to their farm. But anyhow, we moved to Nixa, and I was still in high school. I was about 15 years old, I think, and we worked Bob Mabe, which was one of the brothers, founding brothers of the Baldknobbers show. His sister was married to Wilbur Blancett. They were auctioneers, Earl and Wilbur Blancett, years ago, and so they sponsored a show on KWTO. And we started playing that 3 days a week, and I was still in school. Of course, I wasn't old enough to drive, didn't have a car, so I had to ride with him everywhere we went. But anyhow, we did that, and then I met a guy from Springfield. His name was Buck Tyndall. He was a policeman here in Springfield, and he loved country music, and he wanted to get something going. He said, would you play? I said, well, yeah, if I can. And he was a go-getter. He got a radio show on the old KICK radio station, believe it or not, of country music. I said, you can't get country on that. He said, I can too. But he did. And at the time, we had a show on KTTS, KWT, or GBX, and KICK at the same time going. But he was a good, a lot of fun. And then I worked, when I was still in school, I worked clubs here in Springfield. I rode 6 nights a week with a guy he'd come down and pick me up, play that club in Springfield. But then after I graduated from high school, I went to Kansas City and was playing in a club up there 6 nights a week, and I got kind of tired of that. So I came back to Springfield, and the Jubilee all got going, Ozark Jubilee, and I started working that some, and they booked people in as guests, all the time from the Jubilee, and there's a guy who came here, he was a guest on the Jubilee. His name was Dusty Owens, and he was on Columbia Records at the time, and he come to hear me play. I was playing the club after the show, and then he came out the club and he offered me a job, and I said, I don't know. He said, yeah. I said, I'd like to have you. I said, well, okay. So, what the heck, I was single, I didn't care. So I went to West Virginia and worked with him for, 3 or 4 years. And we were on the road all the time, constantly. Worked a lot of package shows with Grand Ole Opry groups, and a lot of them would have their own band, and the ones that didn't, our band backed them up. But we did that, and all over Canada, and went to Newfoundland for a month, and Prince Edward Island, and all those places up there. And then he got hooked up with a guy that was a booker. He lived in Canada, but he booked a show. He put together a show like a variety show, like the old Ed Sullivan type show, And there might be a juggler on and a country music act, and then And I can remember we had this one deal we did with him. He had this Ren 1010, this dog, and Sergeant Master and that little boy Rusty, and he had his tutor with him, Rusty did. And we had all kinds of different, just variety. It wasn't a rock show, country music show, it was just whatever. But it was really a lot of fun, and we went everywhere with him. He lived on the Ringling Brothers estate down there in Sarasota, Florida. And so we were all over the East Coast with him, but he finally went back to Canada and retired. Then I worked with Dusty a lot. Every time we could, we'd play the jamboree there in Wheeling, which was like a Grand Ole Opry show. It was a Saturday night big show, and a lot of acts, good acts came from there. And at the station was really strong. It was like a 50,000 watt, used to call them 50,000 watt clear channel station like WSM in Nashville. And so was WWVA in Wheeling. And so it reached out to a lot of people. But Dusty was pretty popular, and so I got Jim Kendrick. I don't know if you probably don't remember that name. He was an announcer at KWTO Radio, and he was a good friend of mine. And I talked to him one day, and he said, "I think there's a position coming open here at the station if you'd like to come back and work." And I said, "Well, I don't know." So I got to thinking about it. I thought, yeah, I think I will. I'll go back home. So I worked my last show in Buffalo, New York with Dusty. And that was on a Saturday. I rode a Greyhound bus back to Springfield. I was supposed to go to work Monday morning. Well, I got to Chicago and they lost my amplifier. I told that guy, I said, "Look, I've got to have that amp. I don't have enough." I said, "I've got to have that amp. I've got to work Monday morning." He said, "Well, I'll try my best." Well, he did find it, and I got it. So I got home with it and went to work at KWTO Radio as a staff musician, which there was a lot of people worked there. And I had an uncle, I don't know if any of you remember, Zed Tennis was his name. And he was an uncle of mine, my mom's uncle, my great uncle. So he wasn't working there when I worked there, but worked there and then worked the Jubilee some. But then the Mate Boys offered me a job to work the Baldknobbers show, and I said, "I don't think I want to do that 6 nights a week." Well, that went on about a year, and Bill come back to me, Bill Mabe, and he said, "Wish you'd take that job." And I said, "Okay, I will." So I stayed there 33 years. And that's 6 and 7 nights a week. Plus, we toured in the wintertime. We were on the road in the wintertime till the theater opened in the spring, and then we'd open back up. And in fact, Dave's wife back there, she worked with us. And great singer, good girl. And but we had a lot of fun with the Baldknobbers, and it was a lot of people came to that theater. Back then, well, at that time we seated 1,700 seats, and we would sell out every night. And Fridays and Saturdays we'd do 2 shows. 6:45 and 8:45 was the show times. But the only problem was getting the first crowd off the parking lot and getting the second crowd parked in time for the show. So it might be pretty late till we got out on Fridays and Saturdays, but I worked there. And then also while I was working at KWTO, I worked with Speedy Haworth a lot. Worked a club with him, an old Half a Hill club in Springfield. Worked that with Speedy, and he told me one day, he said, "They're going to start a TV show," said, called it the Slim Wilson Show. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You want to do it?" I said, "Yeah." So we were out there for 11 years on Channel 3 with the Slim Wilson Show, and that was a lot of fun. I was telling Ed Filmer a funny thing that happened on that. Mike Bride, I don't know if any of you know Mike Bride, but he was on the show one time, and he was playing harmonica, and we were doing a Christmas show. and come to Mike's part. Well, he blew it. I mean, it went everywhere. Well, he got tickled. So tried to do it again, and same thing. So we got to call him Lonnie Lead Lip, which he didn't like that too much, but he got over it. And but the funny thing, he couldn't get that out of his mind. What was going to happen? He'd come to his part, and here he'd go again. So he had that nickname for a long time, but we did that. And then years ago, I worked with Jimmy Gately and Harold Morrison, and we did a show on Channel 10 out here. It was KTTS TV then, not KOLR. Anyhow, for Jim Walter Shell Holmes, we did that show. And we also used to do a TV show on Channel 10 back when the TV station was down on, I think was it Walnut Street down there, that on the corner there. They were upstairs. There was a TV station when they first started, and Friday Night Frolics we called it, and that was a lot of fun. In fact, that Buck Tyndall, the guy I told you about, he was on that show. That's how I got to be on it, was because of him. But I retired from the Baldknobbers in end of 2009, and I still work 3 nights a week. But I'll never quit as long as I'm able. And but it's been a good ride, and I've had a lot of fun. And the people and the friends I've met has made it worth it all to me. And I just there's so many things One funny thing I remember, one funny story. We were up in Canada with Dusty Owens, the guy I worked with in Wheeling, and he had a Cadillac, this one stretch limousine Cadillacs, had 2 of them that we were traveling at that time. We didn't have a bus or anything, so the motor mounts went out of one of those Cadillacs, and we were up there, and he went to a garage, and the guy said, "Yeah, I can fix it." He said, "It took me about 4 days to get one." He said, "Oh no, I can't do it. We got a certain date we got to meet." He said, "Well, I need it." And there was a guy standing over by a big open door, leaned up against the wall, and he was just standing there like that watching. He said, "I can fix that." Dusty said, "You can?" He said, "Yeah, I can fix that car." He said, if you can fix it, you have at it." So he took hockey pucks and made motor mounts out of them, and fixed that. Yeah, fixed that car. And when he traded that car off, it still had that hockey pucks in as a motor mount. That's the truth. Yeah, that was a funny. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it. But and another time up there we were in Connecticut, and I got in a snowstorm, and got stuck. Well, there's a guy. A farmer lived there. He had an old Model T type truck, made a wrecker out of it. Well, he pulled us out, and he laughed about pulling that Cadillac out of that old truck, you know. And so the next year we were up there, about the same area. In fact, it was the same area. And what happens? We get stuck again. Who we get? This guy comes along, this same guy, and he said, "Boy, you guys are not going to learn, are you?" But it was fun. That guy would never forget that. But that was up in Connecticut. But I don't know. Like I say, the times I've had, the good times I've had, and the people I've met has been worth every bit. It was kind of weird when I went to work for Dusty, when he offered me that job here on the Jubilee. I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." Well, I got into Wheeling, West Virginia, rode a bus out there, and so I didn't know any of the band, didn't know anybody. I only met him one time, and I got into the hotel there about 6:30. And he called to see if I was there, and I said, "Yeah, I just got here." He said, "Well, we're leaving at 9. I said, really? He said, yeah, we got to go to Watertown, New York. And I said, good gosh. I said, do I get to sleep? He said, no, not now. So, Dusty made Dusty finally, he retired from the music business, and he got in on Amway, believe it or not, on the ground floor. I mean, the first started, and he made tons of money. Believe it or not, he did, and he retired in Florida, and he passed away 2 years ago. And I talked to his wife, but he was a lot of fun to work with. He was from Michigan, and his real name was Robert Jakarski. I said, no wonder you call yourself Dusty Owen. He said, well, nobody's going to remember Robert Jakarski. But he wrote a lot of good songs that a lot of Nashville people recorded that made him a lot of money, and he was good to work for. But that's about all the junk I've got to tell you. I know it's pretty boring, but it's been good for me. I've enjoyed every bit of it, and I appreciate you all having me here today.
How do you tune this? How do you tune one of these things?
Steel guitar?
Yeah.
Well, years ago, like you started out, you had like a 6-string lap steel, you know, and you could tune them in A or E. A lot of people tune them like an open E chord on a guitar, and that's the way a lot of people tune them. And then they came up with a C6, a 6-string C6 tuning. Of course, the guitar I play now, I was lucky to get endorsed by the Mullen Steel Guitar Company in Colorado several years ago, and they give me a new guitar every other year, and I get to keep my old one.
Wow.
But the thing about it is they build it the way I want it, and my setup, everybody sets them different usually, but the tunings you use is a double 10-string, and has 8 floor pedals and 7 knee levers, but it is an E9 chromatic tuning on the top neck and a C6 tuning on the bottom neck, and that's the most popular.
Who are some of the people that would be interesting or famous that you worked with or met or had a funny story about?
Funny story about? Let me think. I don't know. Yeah, Stub Meadows is absolutely one of the funniest guys that I ever worked with in my life. Yeah, and we had a guy that when I worked in Wheeling, he was from the Grand Ole Opry. He was a comedian on the Grand Ole Opry. His name was Lazy Jim Day, was his stage name. But I don't know. Stub was one of the best, yeah. And Uncle Sipe on the Nashville, on the Jubilee was good. Uncle Sipe and Sap they were very funny. Because he. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. Yeah. But those two would be some of the funniest I'd say, or funny stories. But.
Did you know that other steel player from Billings, Missouri, Leon Roush?
I'll tell you something funny about Leon. He worked at Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company on St. Louis Street.
Okay.
And I played clubs here in Springfield with him. And that guy was a completely nut. Now, and he wouldn't mind me saying that because he's a very close friend of mine. And yes, I know Leon well. And he finally moved to Fort Worth. And he took over the old Bob Wills Texas Playboy band. And yeah, he's still in Fort Worth.
He's still alive?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we were doing a show by Dallas, Baldknobbers show on the road in wintertime, and so I'd talked to him, and he was playing a club there. And so as soon as we got done, I went over to that club and got to catch his last set on Leon. But Leon was a good guy, yeah. and had his sign up down here at Billings, had his home of Leon Roush.
Yeah.
They finally took it down for some reason. And so he got a lot of graft over that.
Who took your place at the Baldknobbers?
A friend of mine, name was Dean Holman. And in fact, he's since now left, and he's over at the Baldknobbers now. I mean, the Presleys now. He's the Presley show. Years ago, there was Baldknobbers was the first show in Branson. It was there, and then 8 years later, the Presleys started. Presleys were the first on the strip out there, but Baldknobbers started downtown at the old skating rink down on the lake. And then Thorgy River Boys came, and then the Plummer family. And for quite a while, there was just 4 theaters there, and then they all started booming out. And like today, or maybe not now, but things have kind of slowed down a little bit. But at one time, there was over 100 shows in Branson, believe it or not. Not that many theaters. Of course, a lot of theaters have more than one show. And there's a good point and a bad point about doing that. It helps pay your expenses. But if you have say you've got your own show in a theater, like say the Baldknobbers, for instance, and you have another show that you're booked in there, and people come to see it, and say they don't enjoy it. Well, somebody said, let's go over to Baldknobbers tonight. Well, no, we was there last night, and we seen. They're not seeing your show, they're seeing the other one they didn't like. And so they'll have a tendency to judge every show by one they've seen. And it's just unfair, but that's the way it happens.
There used to be a guy out here at Brentwood had a steel guitar shop out there.
Yeah, his name was Barry Wood.
Barry Wood.
Yes.
And we used to comment about how many steel players. I said, well, what is it? Is it the water? How come all steel players come from this area? It's just amazing how many of you guys.
Yeah, a very good friend of mine, Doc Martin, and a lot of you might remember Doc Martin. In fact, I see Doc twice a year. He lives in Iowa, and he's 90, I forget, 90-something now. But he comes down, and I don't know if you all know Jeannie Bryan or not. Okay, she has a get-together over her house on a Sunday afternoon, and then a very good friend of mine, Jerry Manown, a guitar player here in Springfield. We go over and we have a little jam session for Doc, and he just enjoys it so much. He hadn't played in a long time, but he's had some health issues, but he's got some great stories, and he's a lot of fun. And he was a good friend of mine growing up, and in fact, when we worked at KWTO together, as we was both staff musicians there, if I couldn't work a particular show, he'd work it for me, and then I'd switch out and work one for him. And
Did you just teach yourself, or were there teachers around here?
no, I couldn't find one. What little I know, I taught myself. But I said, well, I'm going to stick with this, but it takes me forever, and it has.
Roger, I understand you're self-taught on the instrument, but how did you move from, say, a lap steel to pedal steel with all those knee levers?
Well,
it's a nightmare.
after you're playing that 6-string steel, you think of a position or a chord or something you like to get, and you think, boy, if I had something to do that. Well, that's what the pedals do. They stretch or lower the strings, or either way, and I've got pedals that stretch and lower the strings at the same time, but it's a little challenging, but it's fun. That's what's the fun part of it is getting a challenge and staying after it, But it's been fun. I still enjoy it. Nobody, huh?
Does it take it a half step up? Is that what it does, that pedal?
Well, it'll raise a half step or full or whatever, however you got it. I've got two pedals on my guitar now that lowers and pulls 4 strings. So there's a lot of combinations, and Dave knows that on steel, isn't there? there's a lot of combinations to get, and most people basically, I use a little different. I've always used a little different tuning than the C6. It's like a C6, but I use a different one that I tried out and I liked. And I've only found one steel player, and he's in Nashville, that ever used the same tuning. It's like a C6, but I tuned to a D6. But like on a standard C6, most guys now will use a D string on the top. Well, I tuned to D, and I use an E string on the bottom, which is the same thing, but the chord progressions you can get with the bass strings is unreal. I mean, and that's what I like. I'm a chord nut. I like you know, big fat C6 chords, but.
So you got to keep all of your guitars when you were representing that company, maybe?
Yeah, I still have the endorsement with them.
How many did you end up keeping?
I've only got 2 left. I got one, let's see, 2 years ago, almost 3. I didn't get one last year because he didn't have anything new that I was interested in. You know, so I've got 2 just alike now. Exactly. I've got one I've had since 2001, and then I got the other one. But I've got the same color. I got everything. They're just, you set them up and you think they're the same guitar. But it's Mullen Guitar Company in Colorado. He's a great steel player himself. Dale Mullen is. In fact, he's going to be inducted into the. I understand. I got a call last night that he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame in St. Louis next year. So I'm tickled for that.
Yeah, don't you have a convention up there or something like that?
Yeah. DeWitt Scott, and he died 2 weeks ago. DeWitt did, and I don't know. His son has been kind of running it anyhow, though. I guess he will continue the convention.
Well, I played with Davey Crucell. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
Davey, I played with him for a long time, and he'd always go up there and talk about it.
Yeah.
He used the synthesizer with his
Yeah.
steel, which was incredible sound.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get a lot of. There's so many settings on them things that you know.
Better than keyboard sometimes. Because you're plucking strings, you know, and they
Yeah.
can't fulfill, you know.
Well, you still got to play a lot of single string stuff on some of that stuff, though. You can't just bear it down, you know.
Yeah.
But,
What kind of amplifier do you use?
I use a PV. Well, all my life I liked the JBL speakers, and I had a guy that he was a factory rep for did repair work for PV at one time, and I said, "What's the best speaker?" He said, "Well, for musical instruments," he said, "a JBL, Lansing JBL." He said, "It's hard to beat." And so I had a twin reverb one time. It had 212 Lansings in it, and I had him to build me a 15-inch speaker. All I had to do was build me another baffle board and mount it in there, and it worked good because those twin reverbs weigh a ton. If you boy, and that's what I was playing when I was in Wheeling and on the road all the time. The longest time we were ever gone on one trip was 13 weeks, which is about almost 3 months. So, and I'm lugging that thing around every night. So, but anyhow, back to what I'm playing a PV now, PV 112. And if anybody ever told me you'll be playing through a 12-inch speaker, I'd said, "You're crazy. You can't handle it."
Did they design that for steel players?
Yes, it is, and it's a good amp. For me, a lot of fiddle players like that amp, but I don't know about guitar players, but yeah.
Is that a solid state amp?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Roger, are there any younger players that you admire, or that you've taught around?
Oh, there's a few guys I've helped quite a bit, but not around here now. Not really playing now, but everybody has their heroes when they grow up. my guy that I really liked, and he passed away about 3 or 4 years ago, was Herbie Wallace. He was from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and very good friend, and just a phenomenal steel player. He could do more with less than anybody I ever seen. He'd take a double neck steel guitar, and like I say, I've got 8 and 8 on it, like 8 floors and 8 knee levers. He'd have like 8 and 4, and just play the guitar out of it. But he's a great player. But of course, a lot of names. Bud Emmons, of course, yeah. And Jimmy Day was one of my favorite steel players. Jimmy worked with Ray Price a lot.
Oh, he's sweet in that thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I went to see Jimmy Day one time. Well, there was a club in Kansas City called 3900 or 30 or Chestnut Inn, and 3900 Club was another club up there. But anyhow, Jimmy Day was working with Willie Nelson, and that's back when Willie Nelson still had a flat top haircut. So you know how long ago that's been. But so I went to see Jimmy Day because I didn't much care about Willie at the time, but I loved Willie now. But Jimmy come in, and there was some guy walking behind Willie, and I had these little red gloves on. And I thought, who's that? And I looked around, and it's Jimmy Day. And he come in, took them gloves off, and laid them down. Jimmy did a lot of stuff. A good story about Jimmy Day was, I was up at the convention in St. Louis one time, and Betty Emmons was the so-called star of the show at that time, and so Jimmy was on the same show. Well, Buddy had a rack of effects about that tall, and I don't know, just a bunch of stuff, and Jimmy Day come out, and he had his steel and his foot volume pedal, and he didn't even have a cord. He had to borrow a cord and a thumb pick from somebody, and he played and brought the house down, because, you know, like you're saying, he could just milk it forever. And so Buddy was supposed to close the show that Sunday evening, and so he said, here's a guy I'm going to bring up to close this show. Said, everybody's enjoyed him more than anybody this year. So he got Jimmy to come up and close the show. And this, of course, again, brought the house down. Yeah.
Texas. Wow.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. Yes.
You know that Pete Drake song, Forever? It sounds like a human voice.
Oh, like Pete Drake did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a pretty easy technique, or is that a gimmick, or what?
Well, yeah, it's kind of complicated. Have you ever seen one of them? Where you hook that thing in your mouth? Yeah. 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 Uh-huh.
So is that how he accomplished it?
That's how Pete Drake did it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Pete was a great steel player too. He recorded with a lot of people in Nashville years ago.
You mentioned half a hill. How about other old Springfield clubs where you played?
Oh gosh, there were so many. The one I started playing at when I was still in a sophomore there in high school was it was a club. It was down on Olive Street, and it was called the RC Cocktail Lounge. Anybody remember that? And at that time, there was a bar everywhere in Springfield. Campbell Street had about 6 of them along there, and they all had bands, live music. Everybody had a band in. But that was one of them. Then I don't know, the old, gosh, there was so many. I was trying to think.
What was it like playing with Slim?
Slim was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. I had more fun with him. I got to work at KWTO with him, and also got to work some on the Jubilee, and then also when we did his show out here. And a funny thing I'll tell you about Slim, he was on KWTO radio 5 days a week at the same time, regular show. Well, one day of the week, he'd be on for MFA. The opposite day, he'd be on for Biederman Furniture Company, which we also used to do a show out here on Channel 3 for Biederman Furniture. But anyhow, his theme song was the old Pony Boy song, MFA, MFA, and then he'd say, B-I-E-D-E-R, same tune. So he come on one day and he forgot what day it was, and he said, M-F-I-E-D-E-R. But we never let him forget that. But Slim was a lot of fun. Slim, a lot of people don't realize, Slim was a great rhythm guitar player. He knew chords, a lot of chords, and you might have a song that's kind of weird or different or something, and say, here's a song I want to do, and I want to say, okay, let's try it. Show him the chords and everything to it. And it might be 3 months later you say, let's do that song, that certain song again. He said, okay. He'd never forget it. And yeah, Slim was I don't know if a lot of people never realize at one time he signed a contract with Decca Records one time. But which those old labels are all gone, you know.
Did you record?
Huh?
Did you record?
I recorded a lot of different people, and yeah, I did quite a bit, yeah.
Did you ever play the Grand Ole Opry?
Never played the Grand Ole Opry. No, never did. But
So you didn't do much in Nashville, really not? Did you do anything in Nashville?
no, not. We were there one time with. There was a sisters on our show, Baldknobbers show, called the Norris Twins. We went down with them one time, and but that's the only time.
Do you remember back when Bill and Jim were still at the Baldknobbers? Is there a couple of prank stories that you could tell?
Oh, I can tell you a lot, but I better not repeat some of them.
How about the guitar?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can tell you one that Bill made with the Baldknobbers. He was terrified of snakes. Terrible. I mean, and so Bill played dobro a little bit, and this Larry Hurst, our bass player was gone. Now, Larry Hurst was the guy's name. He's in Kansas City now. He had this rubber snake, and you can see what's happening within it. He put it in Bill's dobro case and locked it up. Well, the next night, Bill went to get that dobro out there, and that snake was laying right there. And I thought he was going to pass out. He run out the back door. That's back when the building was made different. But yeah, and Jim, of course, he was droopy drawers on the show, and he was real jumpy and everything. We was always getting him doing. A funny story we did. A funny story about a Baldknobbers show. Bob Blevins, which is on the show, he had a Martin guitar, which was a very valuable guitar, an old one, and in immaculate shape. I mean, he took care of that thing. Well, he'd do a song on the show, and then Stubb would come out to do a comedy routine with him. So he would hand his guitar to Droopy Drawers, and Droopy would take him backstage. So and he was always acting like he's going to drop it or something. And Bob Boy, he'd jump. He said, "Don't drop that guitar." So we found this old cheap guitar down. We found this old cheap guitar down at the music store there in Branson, about $20, I think it was. And it looked just like that Martin. I mean, you know, just a glance at it, you think, well, that's that Martin guitar. So we had this, we had it on, we got this on all on film and everything. And so one night we had it all set up, and he come over and he got Bob's guitar. Well, we switched guitars right quick. And he'll come right by me where I was sitting playing steel. And he dropped that guitar and he fell through it. And he couldn't have fell any more perfect. It just busted the back plumb out of it. Strings went everywhere. And Bob was white as that tablecloth there. And he looked, and he couldn't wait. Stubbs said, "Don't worry about it. You couldn't tune it anyhow." And so he said, like trying to tune barbed wire. But he didn't know until he got through with that routine and got off stage that wasn't his guitar. And that was that was a bad trick, but it was fun for us, not him. Not him till he.
In the 60s, I recorded with a gentleman who is in the Hall of Fame, and I wondered if you ever spent any time with Tom Brumley.
Oh, Tom, a very good friend of mine. Yes. In fact, when he came to Branson. Al Jr., his brother. He came to Branson, and Tom. Of course, I already knew Al, and I'd met Tom, but Tom was a great player. But Tom did his own thing. He played his own style.
Well, he's the only guy I know that played a single 11 string.
Yeah, I've got a good friend here in Springfield that's got one of Tom's old 11-string guitars. In fact, he just ordered he's got a new one now, a Mullen guitar, like from the company that and Gary Wilson's his name. And he plays 11-string. But Tom, at one time, bought the old, what was that guitar? ZB Guitar Company, Zane Beck Guitar Company. And he was making them for a while. But funny thing about Tom told me, he worked with Buck Owens. And he said, funny thing, he went to work and they tuned a half a step flat. Buck always tuned in other words, he was an E flat instead of open E. And Tom said, I had a little trouble getting used to that. Yeah, but yeah.
Well, one of the greatest pop licks in rock history was Rick Nelson's Garden Party.
Yeah.
That break. That was wonderful.
Exactly. And yeah, they were good people, all those Brumley's people, and they still.
If you saw him, you'd think he was a CPA. He sure didn't look like
Yeah.
a quota.
Yeah, I found Tom a place to live when he moved here, and he didn't have a place to live, and I found him a place for him. And in fact, Rolene, his widow, and Todd, his son, they's living next to there where I live. And Tommy lives over by Ozarks. But they're both good musicians, but they don't play anymore.
The Brumley family singers don't play anymore in Branson?
No.
Well,
No.
One was in that.
Yeah, that's Al Jr.
Al Jr.
Mhm.
I've got like 6 of his albums.
Yeah,
I tried to figure
he's
out.
a good singer, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. He did a bunch of stuff with Merle Haggard.
I worked, they had their morning show down there, and I worked one year for Tom. He went on the road with the Desert Rose Band one year, and he said, I want to know if I'd work his morning show. They had a morning show, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. So, but, yeah.
Who was Presley's steel player who died? I can't remember his name. Luttrell? He was the comedian for a long time, but he was the steel player.
Wendy Luttrell, yeah, uh-huh.
He was pretty good, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Did you ever play dobro?
Yes, in fact, I played dobro for 2 hours yesterday. Yeah, we have a thing, we do it once a year, and, yeah.
You enjoy that as
Yeah,
well?
yeah, they're a lot of fun. They're easier to carry and set up than a steel at my age. But, yeah, I like dobro. Mm-hmm. I've just got a cheap one. I put a quarterman cone and everything in it, livened it up a lot. And it's a good one. But one thing I do have, and I'm pretty proud of, I've had for a long time, and I bought from a guy. He was over in Hollister one day, and he said, we got talking. He said, you know anybody like to buy a good dobro mandolin? And I said, well, I'm kind of always looking for another old dobro. And he said, well, it's a good mandolin. And I said, well, is it dobros or the mandolin? He said, it's a dobro mandolin. I'd never seen one. And it is. It's a Dobro brand mandolin. I bought it from him. Dobro brand mandolin with the resonator in it. Original. All, you know, a lot of those old instruments like that, the keys will crystallize and fall off. These are perfect on it. I couldn't believe it. And so I've had a lot of chance to sell it, but I don't want to. I may have to someday. Pay my bills. But yeah, I like those old instruments. I've got a couple old guitars and a couple old tenor guitars and an old tater bug mandolin, and they call them an Washburn mandolin. But mostly I just stick to steel guitar. I never made much money playing anything else. But I appreciate y'all having me up here.